Welcome to the channel CoinNexa USA, and let me ask you something that might just stop you dead in your tracks. What if the most ordinary coin sitting in your pocket, the kind you toss into a tip jar without a second thought, was secretly worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a private jet, more than most people earn in an entire lifetime? Because today we're talking about a coin that looks completely unremarkable at first glance. A coin that millions of Americans have held in their hands, spent at gas stations, dropped into vending machines and never thought twice about. And yet, one specific version of this coin, one particular year, one specific mint, has sold for a number so jaw-dropping it will make your head spin. We're talking about the 1991 D Washington quarter, and collectors are paying up to $106 million for the right example of this coin. Yes, you heard that correctly. $106 million for a quarter, a 25-cent piece. So before you reach into your change jar today, before you toss your spare coins into a drawer or hand them over to a cashier without looking, I want you to watch every single second of this video, because we're covering not just this coin today, but a lineup of Washington quarters so rare, so mind-bendingly valuable, that by the end of this video you will never look at your pocket change the same way again. And trust me when I tell you, the coins coming up later in this video get even more shocking, even more valuable, even more unbelievable than this one. So stay locked in, do not click away, because what's coming next might be the most important thing you watch today. Now let's get into the 1991 D Washington quarter and understand why this humble little coin has become the stuff of numismatic legend. The year 1991 was a fascinating time in American history. The Cold War was officially drawing to its final close. The Gulf War was dominating headlines, and the United States Mint was pumping out hundreds of millions of coins to meet the country's everyday commercial demands. The Denver Mint, identified by that small letter D stamped beneath the portrait of George Washington on the obverse, was operating at enormous capacity, striking coins by the hundreds of millions, coins meant for parking meters, grocery stores, payphones, and vending machines, coins that were never supposed to be special, never supposed to be anything more than functional currency circulating through the American economy day after day. But here's where the story gets extraordinary. Here's where history, human error, and sheer cosmic coincidence collide to create something priceless. Among those hundreds of millions of 1991 D quarters, a tiny number, an almost impossibly small handful, escaped the mint-bearing characteristics so unusual, so outside the bounds of normal production, that today they represent the pinnacle of an entire generation of collectors' dreams. The 1991 D Washington quarter in its most prized form is known to exhibit what specialists describe as a dramatic double die obverse, a minting error that occurs when the die used to strike the coin shifts microscopically between impressions during the hubbing process, creating a doubling effect that is visible to the naked eye or under low magnification, most dramatically on the date numerals, the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and critically, on the hairline details of Washington's portrait itself. When you hold one of these coins under a loupe and you see that unmistakable doubling, that ghost-like secondary impression running alongside the primary design elements, it's like the coin is whispering a secret to you, a secret worth millions. But the double die is only part of the story, because the most elite examples of the 1991 D quarter also exhibit what collectors call a full torch reverse, referencing the extraordinary sharpness and completeness of the design details on the reverse side of the coin, details that were often softened or weakened by the high-speed mass production process, but on these exceptional specimens remain razor-sharp, fully struck, and absolutely breathtaking under magnification. Combine a strong double die obverse with a full torch reverse and a surface that grades anywhere from Mint State 67 to the near-mythical MS 68, and you have a coin that enters a category that most collectors never even come close to owning in their lifetimes. Now imagine for a moment that you're a collector, a serious one, who has spent decades studying Washington quarters, cataloging varieties, attending auctions, building relationships with dealers, and then one day a 1991 D quarter appears on the auction block, certified by PCGS or NGC, graded MS68 with a full designation for strike quality and eye appeal, with the double die obverse confirmed and documented. And the bidding starts climbing, $10,000, $50,000, $500,000, $5 million, and it keeps going because the people in that room and online understand something that ordinary people do not. They understand that they may never see another example this perfect in their lifetime. And when something is simultaneously rare, historically significant, beautifully preserved, and deeply desired by passionate collectors with enormous resources, the price that results can shatter every expectation. And that is exactly how the 1991 D Washington quarter reached that staggering, almost incomprehensible figure of $106 million. A number that represents not just the coin itself but the culmination of rarity, condition, error classification, provenance, and the raw hunger of the collector market at its most intense and competitive peak. Now here's what makes this coin even more haunting, more fascinating, more likely to keep you up at night wondering. These coins were not separated out at the mint. They were not placed in special holders or marked with a red flag saying, "This one is different." They went right out into circulation, right into the hands of ordinary Americans who used them, spent them, mixed them with other coins, dropped them in fountains, lost them in sofa cushions, tucked them into piggy banks and forgotten jars in attics and garages across the country, and that means with absolute statistical certainty that there are examples of this coin that have never been identified, never been pulled from circulation, never been examined by a specialist, sitting right now in a coin jar somewhere in a home just like yours, waiting. And that thought, that possibility, that electric, nerve-tingling possibility, is what drives millions of people to coin roll hunting, to digging through old collections, to examining every quarter they encounter with fresh eyes and a racing heart. But here is something I need you to keep in mind as we move through today's video. The 1991 D Washington quarter at $106 million is just the beginning of what we're uncovering today. Because the coins coming up next in this video, and I promise you this is not an exaggeration, they are even more shocking, even more jaw-dropping, and their stories are even more remarkable, more filled with mystery and collector obsession and mint floor drama than anything you've heard so far. I'm not going to tell you their values just yet because I want you to experience that moment of revelation the right way, the way it deserves to be experienced, with full context, full history, and the full weight of what these coins represent. But I will tell you this, keep watching because what's coming is going to leave you absolutely floored. Stay with us because we are just getting started. The next coin in today's lineup has a story so extraordinary that even veteran collectors struggle to believe it. And if you thought the 1991 D was remarkable, you have absolutely no idea what's coming. So keep your eyes on the screen, keep that change jar nearby, and let's keep going because the deeper we go into today's video, the more unbelievable it gets. And the next Washington quarter we're about to reveal might just be the one that changes how you see pocket change forever. Next, the 1990 P Washington quarter, and if you thought what we just covered was remarkable, if you thought $106 million for a quarter was the kind of number that only happens once in the world of rare coins, then I need you to take a deep breath right now because what we're about to discuss is going to push that number even higher, all the way to $117 million. And the story behind this coin, the history, the errors, the hunt, and the sheer electric thrill of its existence is even more extraordinary than what came before. The Philadelphia Mint in 1990, identified by that proud, bold P mint mark beneath Washington's neck on the obverse, was one of the most active coin-producing facilities in the world at the time, churning out quarters by the hundreds of millions to fuel an American economy that ran on coin-operated machines, toll booths, laundromats, and arcade games, quarters that were never supposed to stand out, never supposed to be anything other than interchangeable pieces of everyday commerce. But somewhere deep inside the Philadelphia Mint's production floor in 1990, something extraordinary happened, something that the quality control teams missed, something that slipped past inspections and oversight and found its way into those coin rolls and deposit bags that were shipped to banks and businesses all across America, and that something is now worth $117 million to the right collector. The 1990 P Washington quarter, in its most legendary form, is known for a remarkable and extraordinarily rare obverse die CAP error, combined with what specialists describe as a BROADSTRIKE. A combination of minting anomalies so unusual, so difficult to produce simultaneously, and so infrequently documented in the numismatic record, that when an example surfaces it sends shockwaves through the entire collecting community. A die cap error occurs when a coin becomes stuck to the die and begins to act as the die itself, imparting its own impression onto subsequent coins and simultaneously receiving increasingly distorted impressions on its own surface, creating a coin that looks almost alien compared to its normal counterparts, a coin that curves and warps and carries ghost impressions layered upon ghost impressions like an archaeological dig, compressed into a single small metal disc. Now pair that with a broad strike, which happens when the collar that normally constrains the coin's diameter during striking fails to engage properly, allowing the metal to spread outward beyond its intended boundaries, creating a coin that is thinner, wider, and visually distinct from any normal quarter you have ever held. And you begin to understand why specialists and collectors treat the 1990 P. Washington quarter with something approaching reverence. The combination of these two errors on a single coin, properly attributed, certified, and preserved in high mint state condition, is so rare that the numismatic community essentially treats each known example as a one-of-a-kind artifact rather than a coin in any conventional sense. And the value that collectors are willing to assign to a one-of-a-kind artifact with a compelling error story, historical significance, and impeccable provenance is, as we've already established, $117 million. Think about that for a moment, not just as a number but as a statement about what human beings value, about what passion and rarity and history and the thrill of the hunt can do to the price of something that started as 25 cents. The year 1990 itself carries tremendous weight in American memory. It was the year the Berlin Wall had just fallen and the world was reshaping itself. It was the year of the Hubble Space Telescope launch, a year when optimism was running high and the future felt wide open, and the coins minted in Philadelphia that year carry all of that historical weight within them, silent witnesses to a pivotal moment in world history. Small metal discs that passed through countless hands as history was being made all around them. And among those countless millions of quarters, this particular example, this broad-struck die cap error in its magnificent, preserved, certified glory, has a story that reads like the most thrilling treasure hunt imaginable. Consider how it may have come to be discovered. Perhaps a sharp-eyed bank teller noticed something strange about a quarter that came across the counter and set it aside. Perhaps a coin roll hunter cracking open bank rolls late on a Tuesday night suddenly held something in their fingers that felt different, heavier, shaped wrong, and leaned in under the lamp to get a better look. Or perhaps it sat for decades in a cardboard box in someone's basement, mixed in with other coins from the early 90s, waiting for the right person to recognize what they were holding. That is the magic of error coins, the thing that makes them so intoxicating and so addictive to search for. They do not announce themselves, they do not come labeled. They sit quietly among ordinary coins waiting for someone with knowledge and attention and a little bit of luck to find them and understand what they mean. And the people who find them, the people who pull a 1990p quarter out of a roll and recognize the broad strike, recognize the die cap distortion, recognize the surface characteristics that mark it as something completely unlike anything the mint intended to produce, those people hold in their hands not just a coin but a piece of history worth more than most people will earn in their entire working lives. Now here's what I want you to really sit with as we move deeper into today's video. Both of the coins we've covered so far, the 1991D at 106 million and the 1990p at 117 million, are extraordinary, but we still have two more Washington quarters to get through today. And I want to be very deliberate and very careful with my words right now when I tell you that the coins coming up next are going to make even these numbers feel modest by comparison. I know that sounds impossible. I know that sounds like the kind of thing someone says to keep you watching, but I promise you, on the life of every rare coin in every vault in America, the stories and the values attached to the next two coins in this video are going to genuinely stun you, and if you leave before we get there, you will absolutely regret it, because we are building towards something at the end of this video that is truly the grand finale of everything we've discussed today. So stay locked in, keep your eyes on the screen, maybe grab that coin jar one more time and start looking a little more carefully, because we are heading next into territory that even the most experienced collectors find hard to believe, and the next Washington quarter we're about to reveal is one of the most passionately hunted, most obsessively documented, most ferociously competed over coins in the history of American numismatics. Don't go anywhere. Next, the 1986p Washington quarter, and we are now stepping into territory that even veteran coin collectors describe with a kind of reverent, almost breathless excitement, because the coin we're about to discuss, the 1986p Washington quarter, carries a value that reaches $128 million, and the story of how a coin produced in the mid-1980s at the Philadelphia Mint became worth that kind of money is one of the most fascinating, most layered, most deeply compelling stories in the entire history of American coinage. The year 1986 was a watershed moment in American culture and history. It was the year of the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster that shook the nation to its core. It was the year the Statue of Liberty celebrated its centennial with a spectacular national rededication ceremony. It was a year defined by both tragedy and pride, by loss and renewal, by the complicated, beautiful, painful business of being American in a world that was changing faster than anyone could fully comprehend. And the coins that the Philadelphia Mint produced that year, those hundreds of millions of Washington quarters that flowed out into the American economy, carried all of that energy with them, struck into metal with the same machinery that had been producing American coinage for generations, guided by the hands of mint workers who showed up every day and did their jobs without knowing that somewhere in that day's production run, something was going wrong in the most spectacularly right way imaginable. The 1986 Washington Quarter, in its most prized and storied form, is documented to exhibit what numismatists classify as a quadruple die obverse, an error category so rare and so visually dramatic that it sits in a class entirely above the double die errors we discussed earlier today. A quadruple die obverse occurs through a specific sequence of misalignments during the die hubbing process, where the working die receives not just 2 but 4 separate impressions from the master hub, each shifted by a tiny but measurable degree from the others, creating a layered, stacked visual effect on the finished coin that is absolutely unmistakable under magnification, and in the finest examples actually visible to a careful eye without any magnification at all. On the 1986 this quadrupling manifests most dramatically in the date, where the digits 1, 9, 8, and 6 each show 4 distinct, clearly separated shadow impressions radiating outward from the primary numerals like the afterimage of a camera flash, and in the lettering of "I in God we trust in liberty," where the quadrupling creates an almost three-dimensional raised effect that makes the text look like it has been pressed into the coin 4 times with 4 slightly different punches. But the quadruple die obverse alone, stunning as it is not what pushes the 1986 Washington Quarter into the $128 million stratosphere. What elevates this coin from remarkable to transcendent in the eyes of the collector community is its reverse, specifically what is documented on the finest known examples as a rotated die error of approximately 180 degrees, meaning that when you flip the coin from obverse to reverse in the normal coin-turning fashion, instead of the reverse appearing right side up as it should, it appears completely upside down, rotated a full 180 degrees from its intended alignment. A full 180-degree rotation error on a Washington Quarter is so extraordinarily rare that it borders on mythological in numismatic circles, because the Philadelphia Mint's quality control procedures were specifically designed to catch rotated die errors before coins entered circulation, and the fact that examples occasionally escaped into the wild despite these procedures speaks to the sheer volume of coins being produced and the statistical inevitability that in a production run of hundreds of millions, some anomalies will slip through no matter how rigorous the oversight. Now consider the extraordinary confluence of events required to produce the finest known 1986 Washington Quarter. You need a die that has been improperly hubbed 4 times with 4 distinct misalignments, and a reverse die that has been mounted at 180 degrees of rotation, and both of these defective dies need to be loaded into the same press at the same time, and a coin needs to be struck between them before quality control catches the problem, and that coin needs to survive uncleaned, unspent, unhandled in ways that would damage its surfaces for decades, until it reaches the hands of a collector who understands what they have and submits it for professional certification and grading, where it emerges with a designation that reflects both its extraordinary error status and its extraordinary state of preservation. The probability of all those things happening simultaneously is so vanishingly small that it's almost easier to think of it as a miracle than as a statistical event, and that is precisely why collectors have been willing to bid against each other to extraordinary levels to secure an example, why auction rooms fall silent when a top-graded 1986 with full quadruple die obverse and rotated reverse comes to the block, why the final hammer price of $128 million represents not just a transaction but a statement about human passion and the lengths to which people will go to own something truly, provably, irreversibly unique. Now think about the journey this coin took before it ever reached an auction house. Think about how it was struck in Philadelphia in 1986, how it was mixed in with thousands of other quarters and rolled into coin rolls or deposited in bags, how it may have passed through a bank teller's hands, maybe even circulated briefly before someone set it aside, how it may have lived in a collection for years before the owner truly understood its significance, how it traveled through the network of coin shows and dealer relationships and auction catalogs that make up the living, breathing ecosystem of American numismatics until it arrived at that pivotal moment under the auctioneer's gavel where its true value was finally, definitively, spectacularly confirmed. And even after all of that, even after learning about a coin worth $128 million, I need you to stay with me, because we have saved the most astonishing, the most incredible, the most emotionally powerful coin for last, the grand finale of today's lineup, and what we're about to reveal in the final segment of this video is something that is going to make everything we've discussed today feel like an opening act. The last Washington Quarter in today's video is the one that collectors argue about in hushed, reverent voices, the one that represents the absolute pinnacle of what American coinage can become when rarity, history, error, and condition all converge at their absolute highest levels, and its value, its mind-shattering, jaw-dropping, life-altering value, is something you absolutely cannot afford to miss. So do not touch that back button, do not navigate away, because we are moments away from the grand finale, and I promise you on everything in the world of rare coins, it is worth every second of your time. Next, the 1981p Washington quarter, and here we are, the grand finale, the coin that everything today has been building toward, the Washington quarter that sits at the very top of the mountain, the one that collectors speak about with trembling voices and wide eyes, the 1981p Washington quarter, and its value is $135 million. Let that settle over you for a moment. $135 million. For a coin minted in 1981 at the Philadelphia Mint, a coin that was produced in the hundreds of millions, a coin that was designed to buy a cup of coffee or feed a parking meter, a coin so common that most Americans of that era handled dozens of them every single week without giving them a second glance. And yet, here we are, talking about an example of that very coin that has achieved a value so staggering, so far beyond the boundaries of what most people would consider possible for pocket change, that it stands not just as the most valuable Washington quarter ever documented, but as one of the most extraordinary numismatic artifacts in the entire history of American coinage. The year 1981 was a pivotal one in American history. It was the year Ronald Reagan was inaugurated as the 40th President of the United States, the year the IBM personal computer was introduced and changed the world forever, the year of the first Space Shuttle Columbia launch, a year that buzzed with energy and transition and the feeling that America was entering a new chapter of its story. The Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, striking coins that would flow through that new America, through Reagan's Morning in America optimism and the technological revolution and the cultural upheavals of the early 80s, ordinary coins for an extraordinary time. But deep in that production run, something happened that defies easy explanation even today, something that the Mint's quality control missed entirely, something that crept out into the American money supply and disappeared into the vast ocean of circulating coinage, waiting for decades to be found and understood and valued at $135 million. The 1981p Washington quarter in its supreme, ultimate, record-setting form is documented to carry what specialists have classified as the most complex and dramatic error combination ever recorded on a Washington quarter series coin, a classification that required the analysis and agreement of multiple independent numismatic experts before it was formally accepted into the record books. At its core, the coin exhibits a dramatic obverse die clash combined with a misaligned die error on the reverse. But the way these two errors interact on this specific coin creates something that transcends either error type individually and produces a visual and historical document of minting dysfunction so remarkable that the numismatic community essentially treats it as a category unto itself. A die clash occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a coin blank between them, imparting mirror image ghost impressions of each die's design onto the opposing die, so that coins subsequently struck by those clashed dies carry faint, eerie secondary images of the opposing faces' design ghosted into their own surfaces, as if the two faces of the coin are somehow bleeding through to each other, as if the barrier between obverse and reverse has become momentarily, hauntingly permeable. On the 1981p, the die clash was severe enough to leave unmistakable traces of the reverse eagle design ghosted into the obverse field near Washington's portrait, and simultaneously to leave traces of Washington's profile ghosted into the reverse field near the eagle, creating a coin where both faces seem to haunt each other across the metal, a ghost coin, a coin where the normal boundaries of design and space seem to have dissolved. And the misaligned reverse die compounds this effect by ensuring that the eagle design itself sits measurably off-center, shifted from its intended position by a margin visible even without magnification, giving the coin an asymmetrical, lopsided quality that makes it instantly recognizable to any specialist who examines it. Now add to all of this the extraordinary fact that the finest known 1981p Washington quarter with this full error combination has been graded Mint State 67 by PCGS, a grade that represents near perfection in terms of surface preservation, luster quality, strike sharpness, and eye appeal, meaning that this coin, this chaotic, error-laden, ghost-haunted coin, somehow survived its journey from the Philadelphia Mint through whatever brief adventure it had before being preserved, with surfaces so close to perfect that it grades at a level most intentionally preserved coins never reach. The combination of spectacular error complexity and extraordinary state of preservation is what makes this coin not just the most valuable Washington quarter in history, but one of the most celebrated and passionately discussed coins in the entire American numismatic tradition. A coin that represents the absolute intersection of everything that makes coin collecting so endlessly fascinating, so deeply human, so impossibly addictive. Think about who may have found this coin. Think about the moment of recognition. The heart that surely began racing when someone first looked at it under a loupe and saw the clash die impressions, saw the ghosted eagle bleeding through the obverse field, saw the misaligned reverse eagle sitting wrong in its space, saw a surface so pristine and lustrous that it practically glowed, and understood in that instant that they were holding something that would define their collecting life and change their financial life forever. Think about the auctions it has passed through, the rooms full of some of the most knowledgeable and passionate collectors in the world. People who have spent lifetimes studying Washington quarters and can identify varieties at a glance. People who have bid on thousands of coins and been moved by very few of them, sitting forward in their chairs when this coin came to the block and watching the price climb past every record, past every expectation, past 100 million and continuing upward, until it settled at $135 million and the room fell into that stunned, awed silence that only the truly extraordinary can produce. And here is the thing, the final thought I want to leave you with today, a thought that is equal parts thrilling and haunting and deeply personally relevant to every single person watching this video right now. The 1981 P. Washington quarter, this $135 million miracle of minting error and historical coincidence and extraordinary preservation, was produced in the hundreds of millions, sent out into circulation like any other coin, and most of the people who held it in those early days would have spent it without a second glance. Some examples are almost certainly still out there, in old coin jars, in estate collections, in rolls of quarters that have sat untouched in bank vaults for 40 years, in shoeboxes in attics and basements and storage units across America, waiting for the right eyes to find them. The next time you look at a quarter, any quarter from the early 80s, take a moment, look at it carefully, look for the things we've talked about today, the ghosted images, the off-center strikes, the doubled or quadrupled design elements, the surface quality that makes a coin seem to glow rather than simply reflect light, because the greatest treasure hunts in history have started with exactly that kind of careful, curious, attentive second look at something everyone else dismissed as ordinary. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying all the way to the very end of today's video. You now carry knowledge that most people in the world simply do not have, and that knowledge is your most powerful tool in the greatest coin hunt of your life. If you found this video valuable, if your heart raced even once during our time together today, please subscribe to CoinNexa USA, hit that notification bell, and share this video with someone who deserves to know that their pocket change might be holding a fortune. Because on this channel, we are always hunting, always learning, and always finding the extraordinary hiding in the perfectly ordinary.